Hello, everyone. Welcome to our September Teacher Music Game Club chat. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rebecca Trevelise. I live in Austin, Texas, and I own Austin Arts Academy. So our students there test out the games for Music Game Club.
And I'm Amanda Taro Matthews. I help Rebecca with game design and teaching ideas. I also write the blog. You've probably heard from me because I write the newsletter also. And so I kind of facilitate a lot of the ideas, like here's how to utilize the game, or here's other teaching tips to help you out. So that's kind of my role with Music Game Club.
Awesome. So I will mention that we will have a giveaway at the end of this chat. So stay tuned for that. It is our Sloth Steps game. And if you're an international teacher, you might use sloth semitones or tones. So we also have that language in a separate game file that you would also receive to print. We do have a free game. So if you're new to Music Game Club, go to our website and grab the free game. It's Nature Notes. And your experience with that game will be the full member experience. So you will get the full PDF download with the success poster, with the instruction guide, with the alternative gameplays, with the large format printing. And yeah, it also comes in the different paper sizes. So letter size and the poster size, and then the A3 and the A4. So enjoy our freebie. All right, so our topic today is getting started teaching music theory. So for those of you in group lessons or in private lessons, we have some ideas for you to consider as you get started on your musical journey. We are here to help, so if you have any questions, please contact us. We are happy to troubleshoot or problem solve or suggest games or maybe some alternatives for your students in your studio. So one thing to consider is the student levels, the age range, skill level, learning goals, and learning styles. So those all affect how our students comprehend and absorb information. Music theory can be challenging. There are some challenging concepts out there. And so you have to really kind of be intuitive on how your student learns best and absorbs that information. We do keep that in mind when we create our games. We want a 4-year-old who's a true beginner to be able to play a game, as well as a more seasoned student. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Amanda, about that.
No, I mean, I think well, if you're playing one-on-one, just being creative to adapt the games, and which I know you do really well, Rebecca. It's like if you have a really sensitive player, then it's like, all right, we all move forward, and just adapting it to go with their emotional level, I guess, as well as their mental level for the younger ones. When it gets to older ones, those tend to be a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Also, when you're looking at curriculum, or if you use a certain curriculum or a method book, pairing new concepts that are being introduced in that method book with a game, either the week before it's introduced or the week of or the week after, sometime really close to that concept period when it's introduced, is really critical, I think, for the student really enjoying learning something new. And the retention rate of that information we have found is exponentially higher because it's such a fun environment. They just kind of take it in and they can actually absorb it. I've learned at a much younger rate. So I can teach harder concepts much sooner to my students, even like a year or two sooner than I used to, because we have fun games that allow for just information and we break it down. A lot of our games have guides. And so if you're even a new teacher teaching this concept for the first time, we have guides and ideas for you to pull from. Sometimes our guides include different ways to even teach the concept. So utilize those. Amanda's great at kind of brainstorming what are all the ways a student could learn this concept or a teacher could teach that concept. Some students do well with curriculum, and other students really want that kinesthetic experience. So I have found actually even the ones who really are brainiacs and are, love music theory tests, they actually still love sitting down and playing games with me. Even my older teens. So don't think that no one's that there are students out here that shouldn't be engaging in music theory weekly. But yeah, having that kinesthetic experience and just sitting down with your student, laughing with them, teaching them game strategy. There's other life skills that are actually being taught during game time, during lesson time. So we have a few of our, I guess, different areas of music theory broken down into segments. And so we'll share just a couple of games from each kind of topic area. So our first is dynamics. So we have two games. The first game is Dynamic Den. This was one of our very first games that we released, and it's still a studio favorite. I know it's been around the longest, so of course it would be a top seller, but I think just the graphics of the hyenas and all the baby lions, and as they get older, and then the larger lions, it's just really gratifying to see the art that's involved in this game, help students learn dynamics. And the other one is called Doggy Dynamics. This is a newer game that we released recently. And it involves a few extra dynamic markings that did not come out with Dynamic Den, like Crescendo Decrescendo. And of course, it's dogs theme. We've got the larger breeds against the smaller breeds, but don't worry, just because you're a large breed dog does not mean you will not that you will win. So these cute little smaller breeds and larger breed dogs are studio favorite. Okay, so moving on to individual note and rest values. Of course, this is probably one of the top categories that a beginner teacher does need to have a game or two ready to go. So we have 4 Foxes, which is an adorable winter scene with foxes hopping around in the snow. And this game helps students learn the names of the notes and the rests that they see, as well as the number of counts that it can get. And you can tailor the game much easier and much harder. So, and that's of course our beautiful success poster. Counting Caterpillars is one of my favorite games. Each student gets their own game board, so that's a very kind of different aspect for this game. And the students are building measures, so they get, one note or one rest at a time to place into their measure. And so they can be very mindful of, what is this that I'm using? How many beats are in my measure? How many beats are missing? And then drawing the correct amount of notes or rests to complete their measure. And this is in 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, and 5/4 time. So yes, a lot of music for a young child is not written in 5/4 time, but that is okay. They can count up to 5, so they can fill a measure with 5 beats. And it's kind of a fun experience for them to realize when they get to 5/4, it's just not a foreign thing. It's like, oh yeah, 5/4, it's just 5 beats per measure. So
I will add really quickly. I use this game to teach time signatures to my students. I'll use quarter notes, and we'll be like, all right, it's a 2/4 time signature, 2 quarter notes, and then I'll have them guess the others, and they've really picked up on it.
Yeah, yeah. Another game that teaches individual note and rest values is Rhythm Reef. So this is a super fast paced game. This is a studio favorite. This game, when a rest is played, so students are just in a circle, or you're going back and forth if you're one-on-one, and they're playing cards. The moment someone lays a rest, the next person in line around the circle has to pay the amount of cards that the rest value would get. So if I laid a half rest, the next person would have to pay me 2 cards, and then I would collect from the pile. So the goal is to get all the cards. So this is a super fun way, and it really hones in on rest values. So yeah, super fun game. Okay, we do have one game that is that can be played for a preschool level. So you could use this with even a 3-year-old student or a 4-year-old student. It can also be used with older students for note reading, but specifically for those preschoolers, this is a lines and spaces game, and it's called Starfish Staff. You can also play the game with a more beginner using the lines and spaces, and another student who is note reading already can also play the game at the same time. So super cute game, super simple, but super important to have in your studio. The next, rhythm. Okay, so obviously rhythm is another like important pillar in music. So I would say definitely if you're a beginning teacher, you need to also have a rhythm game, super important. Rhythm Reef. Oh, I mentioned Rhythm Reef already, didn't I? Yes, because it was individual note and rest values. So Rhythm Reef can also be used for rhythm games. So what I do is I take the individual cards that are used in the game and I lay out different rhythms and I have students clap them. Also, another alternative would be to lay out 2 different rhythms. I clap one of the rhythms and the students have to guess which one is correct. And so they'll point to the rhythm that they think they heard. So lots of different ways to utilize those resources. Counting caterpillars, you saw earlier. Rocky Rhythms. So I have Rocky Rhythms here. Here is the success poster. This is a really cool campsite, mountain scene. And this is another fast-paced game. So students are going to collect 4 of a kind. The cards here. So we've got rests, we've got dotted notes. We do have treble clef and bass clef notes. Yeah, we have treble clef and bass clef rests on the staff. And so students have to really be paying attention if they're collecting only whole rests. They have to make sure that, if it's a different clef, that it is the correct, it's not a half rest. And we have the quarter notes with the stems going up. We also have the quarter notes with the stems going down. So that created an extra little challenge there. So that's one option. And then Rabbit Rhythms is another adorable game. So this is obviously rabbit themed, and you've got 6 rows of veggies, and the rabbits are working their way down the veggie patches. This can be a fast-paced game, but you can also tailor it to fit the needs of students who need more time or that are very sensitive. So this is showing them rhythms, measures of rhythm in 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, and 5/4 time. We do have 2 different levels, and it's easy to sort the cards so you can have a harder level and an easier level, and students can play at the same time on both levels. All right, so note reading obviously is a very important music theory concept that you can always be working on. So Starfish Staff, which I mentioned earlier, Keyboard Kittens, this is a new game for this year. The nice thing about Keyboard Kittens is not only do you have notes on the staff, but we included ledger line notes. And for level 1, we have keyboard geography. So that very beginner student, that 3-year-old, that 4-year-old, that 5-year-old that's just starting out and needs help with their keyboard geography, this is a perfect game for them using the level 1 cards. Okay, neighborhood notes. All right, this is another fast-paced game. So, and I say fast-paced, so I'll show you on Rocky Rhythm. So there's different points associated around the board. And when a student gets a 4 of a kind, they grab the points off the board that they need. So here's the neighborhood notes. So you can see there's different buildings in the neighborhood that have different points associated with them. So it's just a super fun way of reviewing note names or notes on the staff, but having to work fast, which obviously the faster we are at note reading, the better sight reader and performer we're going to be. So, okay, reading a score. So this is a favorite one of mine for this time of year. So September, October. I know students love pulling this out in October and November just because Halloween's in October and there's fall festivals going on, but this game is centered around reading a score. So as pianists, a lot of times our score is can be very intimidating. Like there's a lot going on in the score. We have first, second, and third endings. We have Da capo al fine. We have dal segnos. We have what else am I forgetting that's in the game? We have repeats. Yes, we have repeat 1 octave above, repeat an octave below. We have repeat 2 octaves above, repeat two octaves below. So lots of different ways. The thing I love about this game is the students create the score to begin with. And then as they roll the die, they're navigating through the score properly. So when they get to a certain point and they have to go back, that's when a mistake could be made, right? So they've got to be really paying attention. So super fun, very, very interactive score. So every time you play that game, the game board will be different. Let's see, ear training. So we have an ear training game called Listening Lemurs. And this is a very extensive game because it covers all major, all minor, and all perfect intervals. So I usually will play this game and I will only teach the perfect intervals first. So they only have the perfect interval move cards out. And we go over the songs that they would like to associate with those interval pitches. And then once they have those mastered, we can always add major and then add major and perfect together, then teach minor. And then at some point they get all major, minor, and perfect intervals playing all at the same time. But that takes a while for their ear to develop. So be patient with this game, but it's very essential. Learning key signatures. Okay, so do not be intimidated by these games. We have made these games accessible for the very beginner. So a 4-year-old beginner who has not seen music before can play these games, I promise you. And then of course, a more advanced student who is playing from different keys, even learning relative minors, they can play this game. So Flamingo Flats is our first game. And it has key signature cards that have 0 to 3 flats. So the very beginner would just be counting the flats in the key signature. So this is making them very aware of what they're actually looking at in the score. I remember when I was younger, I wouldn't even pay attention to the key I was in. I would just go straight to the note and just start playing it. So I made a lot of mistakes and assumptions. I was not aware, or I don't know, I just didn't have the awareness to really pay attention to the beginning of the piece, like what meter am I in and what key signature am I in? So this clues those beginners into the very beginning of the music, which is very important. So Flamingo Flats, obviously, if they are a more advanced beginner, they will look at the notes in the measures and determine how many notes are affected by the key signature. And that's how many moves they're going to make. Shrimp Sharps is a companion to Flamingo Flats. And it's very similar in style. It's just 0 to 3 sharps are represented in the measure cards that are shown in the gameplay. And Flamingo Flats and Shrimp Sharps can come together in this magical, huge board. And those rocks and the seaweeds become portals from board to board. And so students love when they find out that they can portal and have teams. So it's Team Flamingo versus Team Sharps. I'm sorry, Team Flamingos versus Team Shrimp. And it's a huge battle. And it will take longer to play that game if you have both boards, but it's super fun. So save it for those game days that you have in your studio or those super fun party games if you have those. And then the last one that I'll mention about key signatures is Froggy Fifths. So this covers all the key signatures. Okay, all 15. So, but we have 4 different levels of gameplay, so don't worry. We have something for the true beginner, and then we have something a little bit harder, and then we have the major and the minor cards where the student has to know how many sharps or how many flats. So fun game. My students really, really love this. This is still one that they ask for frequently. Yeah. So let's see, there's two more categories that we'd like to talk about. Intervals is the next one. We have an Icy Intervals game, which is a penguin themed game. And this showcases students understanding how to determine if it's second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth harmonically. So fun game. We've got that ice slide in the very center of the board. So students like taking that slide if they need to get quickly over to the other side of the board to claim an interval. Listening lemurs, I did mention earlier, that's also an interval game. So that would be a melodic interval game. Though you could play listening lemurs harmonically, but that is definitely harder for the students. Okay, and then our last category would be chords, and we have two games that highlight chords. So Chameleon Chords teaches students major, minor, augmented, and diminished chords. And don't get too stressed out about teaching a beginner this, because literally we have, I think, 3 or 4 different ways of teaching these chords. So I personally teach it by counting half steps. So I can take a 4-year-old, I can teach them, they can count to 4 and they can count to 3. That's all you need to be able to play this game. Yeah, so Amanda's showcasing how to teach the chords. Those are amazing guide sheets for beginner teachers and for beginner students who are just trying to figure out, okay, am I getting the answer correct? And they need just maybe a guide to reference. Crow chords, on the other hand, the student is building chords. And so the most beginner students will just be building a C, F, and a G chord. And so what I do is I take my dry erase board and I highlight what a C chord actually is. So if they get a C, they know they also need an E and a G card to collect, and then they can claim their C chord. So true beginner can play this game. We have a more advanced level where they can build other chords using accidentals, like they can build minor and augmented and diminished chords. But it's a beautiful game with a bunch of amazing crows. So yeah, so keeping track of student progress, I highly recommend utilizing the success poster pictures. If you take a picture or take a quick video of the student maybe saying the success poster saying, or I don't just saying how much they enjoyed playing the game, that means a lot to the parent. It clues them in your lesson notes if you write why you played the game and the important music theory concept that was being covered in the game. So that's something I've learned, making that connection with the parents and having that graphic attached to the lesson note is really helpful. A lot of times I have noticed too with students is when we first start learning a concept, we talk about it a lot more. Like the gameplay is just slower because I'm explaining, I'm helping them get the correct answer. So almost every time it's their turn, I'm helping them get the correct answer, and that's completely okay. They do not need to have a perfect answer every time you play the game the first couple of times. And then I start weaning them off of my help. Like I just help them less and less. If they need prompts, I'll give them little hints. Or if another student is present, I will ask the student, hey, can you help them? Do you have any hints that you could give them? Because that's very helpful for students to learn how to help others and give them the knowledge without just like blurting out the answer. So that's another life skill is you can model to your student how to nudge and guide someone to the correct answer instead of just giving it to them. I did not mention our online games. So Amanda, maybe you can jump in and chat about that real quick.
Yeah, so we use the Boom Learning platform. So if you just type in Boom Cards, then you'll find their website. And we use all of our beautiful artwork to create games that are online. And what I love about the Boom Cards is that they're instant correct. So like, let's say we're doing crow chords. That was the last game we talked about. And so one of our Boom Cards is where you might see C, E, blank. And they have to drag, is it F, is it G, is it A? And so if they drag A, it will say this quick whoops, and you got to try again. So then they drag C. So it's a really hands-on way of learning things. They're very easy to use. We've got several tutorial videos on our YouTube about that, but these are really good. First, if you teach online, it's really easy to screen share and have your students do it. Second, they're really good to send home with your students. If your students need a little extra review, some students really like game time, like screen game time if their parents allow it. And so then they love, when piano practice becomes a game and at home, because it's kind of hard to send the printable games home, but the boom cards, very easy to assign. But you can also use them in person lessons. You could use them in group lessons where you like screen share and the students take turns to answer the cards. So they're really a really good tool also to use. And I would say they're actually possibly even easier to use than the printable games if you're first starting out, because there's explanations on the cards. They kind of guide you through it. And like I said, it's instant correct. So if you're not 100% sure of maybe it's key signatures and maybe you're a little weak on your minor key signatures or whatever, then you don't have to have all the answers. The boom cards will have the answers for you. So if you're just getting started and there's a few theory areas you feel unsure about, do some boom cards. Do some boom cards yourself to like really refresh up on it. But it's also a really easy way to get into using games with your students.
Love that. I do know a couple of teachers who have stations, and so they have like maybe partner lessons, and part of that partner lesson, the student will be doing some kind of worksheet or some kind of game element or computer game. And so that's a great time to have your boom card loaded up on your iPad, and the student can go through a deck in just a few minutes. And yes, it's self-correct, so you don't have to be there monitoring it at all. So awesome. Well, so I guess at the end here, I just want to encourage y'all to just have fun while learning. That's the whole point of bringing out a game, is not only it's covering an important music theory concept that needs to be learned or reviewed for your student, but it's a time full of joy and excitement, right? So you're making a connection with the student, you're building that bond, that lifetime memory. So yeah, just have fun and enjoy playing with your students.